Welcome to episode 281 of Nurah Speaks podcast, and I'm your host, Nurah Muhammad. I want to thank you so much for joining me for another episode. If it is your first time joining, welcome to the podcast where I share information that I think is relevant, that I believe can be useful and instrumental for our people. And it is a service of love, and it is an activity that I'm so grateful to participate in. And I'm so grateful to have great people that support this work and that share this work. And if you believe that Nurah Speaks is valuable, I encourage you to subscribe on YouTube or Spotify or Apple, wherever you get your podcasts. Please subscribe. If you're someone who listens every now and then, you can check me out on YouTube. Or if you're someone that likes to watch the episodes and maybe you're taking a trip, you can listen on Spotify or Apple. But wherever you get your podcast, I do encourage you to make sure you share it with other people. Share it so that other people can be informed and made aware of information that's important to us and that's important for us to know. And also, make sure you leave me a comment, a review, a rating where you get this podcast. I'm always interested to know your thoughts. And I want to thank you, those audience members who share encouragement and positive feedback. I welcome your constructive feedback and the encouragement that I get. I am just so grateful for it. And it goes a very, very long way. And it is always meaningful to me. So thank you, everybody who comments, who calls, texts, emails, and shares that feedback. In this episode 281, I'm going to talk about the six leading causes of death for Black people in America. And I just wrapped up the Know Your Numbers series and talking about some important health metrics that we should know about. So I encourage you to go back and listen and watch those episodes. However, in this episode, I'm kind of summarizing the six leading causes of death for the Black community. And this is information that is in the public domain that's readily available if we go looking for it. And so I specifically found this on the CDC's website. It's the National Center for Health Statistics. And this is a report that was published in September of 2025, specifically the National Vital Statistics Report. And this is volume 74, number 10. And, I want to make sure that I leave the link in the show notes so that you can access it yourself. It's always great to kind of get off the beaten path, so to speak, of what's common for us to get on our phones or on our computers to research, to look up. And so perhaps this is off the beaten path for you. And it's really interesting information. You can find infant mortality rates. You can find rates of gestational diabetes, gestational hypertension, all sorts of things. And it's really interesting to know. And I came across this and I thought, let me share this on the podcast as well, because it does sort of coincide with the series, Know Your Numbers, that I just shared with you. And what I find to be remarkable and interesting is that these six leading causes of death can be preventable, and they are preventable. And whether we know it or not, our health is really in our hands to a great extent. Now, I understand that we can be impacted by noise pollution, air pollution, water pollution, and I know that that's a reality for us. However, there are things that we can change. There are choices that we can make to mitigate the many risks that we have. I mentioned things that we can control, like pollution. We also may not be able to control the family that we were born into and the traits that are inherited. However, there are still lifestyle factors that we do have control over to even determine how some of our inherited traits can impact us. I'm going to go through them 1 through 6, and then I'm going to break them down. Of the 6 leading causes of death for Black Americans, the first primary leading cause of death for Black Americans is heart disease. Number 2, now this is in order. Okay, this isn't just kind of randomly provided to you. I'm listing them in order. So the number one cause of death for Black Americans is heart disease. The number two cause of death for Black Americans is cancer. The number three cause of death is unintentional injuries. And I'll explain that. The number four cause of death for Black Americans is stroke. The number five cause of death for Black Americans, diabetes. And the number six cause of death for Black Americans, unfortunately, is assault and homicide. So the number one cause of death for Black people in America is heart disease. And you're going to find kind of a running theme as I go through this. But in the last series, I talked about some of the factors, health risks that we have that contribute to heart disease and cardiovascular disease, heart disease. These are diseases that affect the heart, the vessels, arteries, the veins. And there's a combination of factors that cause heart disease, and they are high blood pressure, an unhealthy diet, high cholesterol, diabetes, air pollution, obesity, tobacco use, kidney disease, physical inactivity, alcohol use, and stress. All of these factors contribute to heart disease. And perhaps outside of the air pollution, all of these other factors are really in our control. And I think understanding that we have authority and power, we can get these health statistics, get these facts and figures, and just feel like, man, I'm doomed. My family's doomed. We're all doomed. And it doesn't have to be that way. It is important to me to know that you know, and to encourage you to take matters in your own hands, because we can, and we can change these. So that's the number one cause of death in the Black community is heart disease. Number two is cancer. And there are many factors that contribute to cancer. I've mentioned gene mutations and things that can be inherited from parents. But there's also tobacco use. We have a choice in that. There's also diet, right? Eating processed foods. We talked about that. Not eating a lot of fiber in our diets, eating the sugars, high sugar diets with a lot of saturated and trans fats. We talked about that. But what else contributes to cancer? Physical inactivity, obesity, and alcohol use. I mentioned we're going to see a theme here. So the number two cause of death in the Black community is cancer. The number three cause of death in the Black community are unintentional injuries. And this can mean motor vehicle accidents. This can mean falls. And this can also mean drug overdoses or drug interactions that cause and contribute to death. Car accidents. With modern technology, there's an unfortunate increase in the potential for car accidents because of the technology, because of cell phones, or distracted driving is kind of the general term. So a lot of car accidents are caused by distracted driving, whether that's you're distracted as a driver or someone else is. So car accidents are included in the unintentional injuries. Medication, right? Whether that's drug abuse or substance use disorder, or that's an accidental mismanagement of medications. And we know that that can happen. That is not uncommon. We take medications largely because we're dealing with a medical issue, or we're taking opioids as a pain relief and as a result of accidents. But to not manage how we take the medications, to be very preventative and hesitant, and even starting an opioid for pain management and looking to other ways, whether that's massage, whether that's acupuncture, whether that's stretches, trying to find other ways to manage pain, whether that's an anti-inflammatory diet, movement. I understand that many people suffer from chronic pain, have back injuries from work accidents and things like that. But we should also understand that using opioids comes with real risk. And many people become addicted, unfortunately, from not because they were experimenting with drug use, but really from prescription medications. So be conservative, I'll say. Be conservative about prescription medications that your doctor gives you that are opioids and that do have the potential for addiction. And then if we have folks who are taking medications to manage health issues, changing our diets and lifestyles so that we will no longer need these medications, or if they are necessary, then assisting maybe our parents with their medications and just asking, do you need help with that? Because, drug interactions can have real adverse complications and implications, as we should know that. But then the last unintentional cause of death from an injury is related to falls. And falls can be unfortunately common in older people. And that can be from a loss of balance, strength. And so it's good that we are active, that we do stay walking and moving our bodies as we age so that we can have balance, so that if you do trip, then you have the agility to kind of catch yourself before you fall. There are classes that teach older people how to fall so that they know how to fall so that they don't cause real injury to themselves. And then certain exercises can help us maintain or improve our bone density so that we are not so vulnerable to fractures if we're older and we fall. Um, a real serious injury and common injury, especially for older women, are hip injuries, hip fractures, in fact. And a hip fracture can be an injury that can change a person's life. And unfortunately, when a person has fractured their hip, there can be a very rapid and stark decline in overall health. One, it impacts mobility, right? And we know when we're mobile, that also impacts our mentation or our mental health, our mental clarity. The more active we are, the better that is for our brains. And if we are inactive because we have a hip injury and we're not moving, then not only does that impact our mentation, but that also impacts us socially. So we're not getting out and getting around other people and having social relationships. A hip fracture does require emergency surgery. And then if a person doesn't have the appropriate care, follow up, and therapy, mobility can really be impacted. And when a person is less mobile, they're less social, their mentation, their brain health can suffer. So falls can be very dangerous and very deadly for older folks. And so helping them, our seniors in our lives, stay active, healthy, encouraging them. I know my friend, she takes her mother to chair Zumba at a senior center, a community center that does senior activities. So helping our seniors and we ourselves staying active as we age is very, very important. Obviously, we think when we're young, we're moving around. We often don't think about ourselves 40 years, 30 or 20 years from now, but we should be thinking about who we want to be when we're 75 and 80. And hopefully you want to be someone that's active, healthy, agile, and still able to be fairly independent as you age. And that comes by being active and choosing a healthy diet. The number 3 cause of death for Black Americans are unintentional injuries. The number 4 cause of death for Black Americans is stroke. Now, what contributes to strokes? High blood pressure, obesity, physical inactivity, poor diet, and smoking. Many things that are within our ability to control. The 5th cause of death for Black people in America is diabetes. And we talked about diabetes in the Know Your Number series and ways to prevent diabetes, kind of understanding what it is, understanding our blood glucose, understanding insulin resistance. And obesity and physical activities are contributors to diabetes as well as metabolic syndrome, which includes high cholesterol, high blood pressure, and high glucose. So diabetes is the 5th cause of death for Black people in America. The 6th cause of death for Black people in America are assaults and homicides. And that's something that probably deserves its own separate conversation. When we think about why are we causing this sort of harm to ourselves? And I know you say, are you talking about Black on Black crime? Well, white people are mostly killed by white people. and Black people are mostly killed by other Black people. And so there are assaults or homicides perpetuated by other people who are not Black people. However, Black people predominantly are killing Black people, and the causes of these homicides is something that we really need to expand in a broader conversation. So I'll make sure I put that in my mind to talk about in a later episode. But one thing I do think about is impulsive issues or mental health issues. I don't think that we are necessarily planning to kill each other. I would suggest, and I believe that the research will probably back me up, that most homicides against Black people are probably impulsive crimes, crimes of passion, or accidental killings. We know that we have a gun violence issue in our communities, and most people who have guns are killing people who look like them. And our communities are flooded with illegal guns, and we don't manufacture guns. We don't manufacture the bullets for the guns, the ammunition, but we do know that somehow, and I don't think it's magic because I don't believe in it, guns are being brought into our communities, knowing that we will be using them against each other. So that's something that we have to deal with. I think that impulse and emotionalism has a lot to do with that. I know poverty has a lot to do with that. Drugs have a lot to do with that. And lack of love of self has a lot to do with that. And again, I will talk about more of that in a future episode. However, when we look at these 6 leading causes of death, the contributing factors are within our control. So that's heart disease, that's cancer, that's unintentional accidents, that's stroke, diabetes, and assaults and homicides. And I'll just make another note about the assault and homicide. I looked at the statistics for other groups of where they fell. I believe for white Americans, Black Americans, Hispanic Americans, the number one cause for all was heart disease. But the number 6 cause of death for Black people are assaults and homicides. Well, that's 21 for white people. So if you look at the list, what is killing or contributing to the death of white Americans? Assault falls at 21, and for Hispanics, that falls at 11. For us, it falls after medical diseases, right? So I'm talking about heart disease, cancer, diabetes, and stroke. So I know that people are looking at homicides as, a health issue, or they're studying it like a chronic health issue or a contagious health issue. And there are programs and violence interrupters or pure violence programs that looks at violence like a health epidemic, and it's tracked, it's monitored, and then there's prevention. So I think that is great topic for another conversation for us to expand, and we'll do that in a future episodes. But most of what we see here is within our control. And I know people say, well, I gotta die of something. And we are going to die of something. But as we age, I think the goal is to live as long as possible and with the best health as possible. And I think that's something that we all should want. It's not that I want to be 80, but I'm a sickly 80-year-old person. Perhaps, your heart fails from age, but I don't want my heart to fail because I've been mistreating it, because I haven't been taking care of it. I haven't been taking care of my kidneys and my liver, my eyes, my lungs. I want to take care of the body that God gave me. I only get one. I'm not going to get a second one. I'm not going to get a second chance at this life. So I want the blessing of life that I have. And I encourage everyone who's listening and watching to do the same. So I hope that this has been useful information. Let me know what you think. Leave me a comment, leave me a rating, review. Make sure you subscribe to Nurah Speaks and come back next week for another episode. Until next time, stay in peace.
We were brought here as a piece of property. And to keep that piece of property, it is to not allow the property to know the value of the property. What I mean by that, if you had known the history of yourself, you would not have been made a slave. And you won't be a slave now if you have a knowledge of yourself. It's hard to enslave a person that have equal knowledge with you. You just can't do it. And so this knowledge of yourself is the thing that will free you from what you have been suffering from.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Nurah Speaks. Look out for a new episode coming at you fresh next week. And if you want to learn more about me and the work that I do, you can visit my website, NurahSpeaks.com. Or if you have a listener question, you can email me at Nurah@NurahSpeaks.com. You can also follow Nurah Speaks on X, Instagram, and Facebook at Nurah Speaks. I will be sure to include links in the show notes. If Nurah Speaks has value to you, please subscribe, rate, and review, and share with family and friends. And be sure to check out previous episodes. And remember, don't just join the movement, be the movement. Stay in peace.